Fonties, Bill Thorpe, it's Friday.
The stores are about to get real crazy. Just saying, bring a bouncer or something with you.
Lots of text messages coming in on last hour's discussion with Chris Murray about changes coming to the Catholic Church in America in light of Dolan's resignation being accepted, but then about the Catholic Church becoming more appealing to young men and what is that going to mean for women, all that stuff. ILJ texted in, guest was really good. I think he's right with thinking that women will be attracted to the kind of man who knows the Lord. He said, get to any Christian Bible-believing church. But he said, be careful of some of the woke churches out there. Yeah, of course. But yeah, great conversation with Mr. Murray. A lot of fun.
Yeah,
and you were a silent Catholic.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you guys would team up.
Well, the thing is, the idea is when you're in that dynamic, it's awkward to have the two going back and forth. And yeah, I become the third wheel. And the idea is that if Chris and I start going down that road, is there any space in the conversation for you? And do he and I get into some of these strange minutia when I think the conversation on those terms is more useful for you as somewhat of an outsider coming in and asking certain questions, because I think it's more reflective of what the audience is going to ask.
I want to hear from you just briefly, and then Gabe Evans is going to be joining us here in a minute. What do you think of the change with regards to Dolan? Did you think he was a good archbishop? Do you like the change? There
are some things that I like and things that I disliked with Dolan, but overall, I think he was, vast majority of it was positive. Not surprisingly that I disagree with my church on a number of things. I'm just kind of like that. If people haven't noticed, just listen to the show so far in general. And I think, though, the process seems to be good. What I appreciated the most was it seems like this person is reflective of the way that Pope Leo sees the church going, but he isn't pulling one of his running buddies. From what I'm understanding, the idea that it's not, hey, I'm going to get all my best friends and we're going to have this really cool club. It seems that this is a person being chosen based on liturgical merit, and I appreciate that. And I think that is going to really help, because I'm not certain that the church always makes those choices. And so I am heartened by this selection. I don't know the individual very well. I like what Chris outlined there, but I think that this is a good choice from what I have seen so far. I can't judge until the person's in the job and I see what's doing, but I like it. I think it's good. It's sorry to see Dolan go, but he had to. That's the rules. 75, can't be there anymore. Yeah.
All right.
I wonder if Congress noticed.
Yeah, right.
Curious. We'd like to do something like that. Just saying.
Hickenlooper, clearly not. He'll be in his 80s during this next term.
Think about it. That'd be great. Just
with a 3-year-old son.
Yeah.
A little combination of everything there. All right, we're going to be talking with Gabe Evans coming up here in just a second, Congressman from the 8th Congressional District. That's the northern part of Denver up into Weld County. It's going to be a fascinating conversation. Some controversial votes this week. We're going to hear directly from him. Now, though, is time for the news.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. TGIF 45 with cloudy conditions in Denver, expecting a high of 64 today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, Excel President Robert Kenney says tens of thousands of customers will be impacted by power shutoffs today, predicting even more powerful wind gusts.
75 to 90 miles per hour. The relative humidity is even lower, and so we're expecting that we're going to need to execute another public safety power shutoff.
The shutoffs were scheduled to start 3 hours ago, and we're thinking that it's impacting nearly 70,000 customers.
I am a lineman for the county.
The company said some people may power for 3 days. High winds caused 160,000 customers to lose power Wednesday due to unplanned outages from downed lines. Officials say the Brown University shooting and the killing of an MIT professor were committed by Claudio Neves Valente, who was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound Thursday in a New Hampshire storage unit. Authorities had probable cause to charge the Portuguese national with the murders of the two students at Brown and the MIT professor. The nation's green card lottery is being suspended by 47 after it was used by Valente. He entered the country in 2017 through the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said the program has been paused. And two Tren de Aragua members have been indicted on multiple charges here in Colorado. The U.S. Attorney's Office announced the indictment of the gang members on Thursday. Only one is in custody at this time. 47 is set to make an announcement regarding drug prices today. Caroline Levitt said he'll be announcing more incredible deals that will lower prices of drugs and pharmaceuticals. The deadline for the administration to release the Jeffrey Epstein files is midnight. The deadline was set under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, passed by Congress last month to make the records public. Some parts of the files may still be redacted. The decision to rename the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts the Trump Kennedy Center is drawing backlash.
The center saying the vote was unanimous, but several members of Congress who are on the board but don't typically vote say they were shut out, including Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty.
Beatty says she called into the meeting, but her microphone was muted and she couldn't register her opposition. Members of the Kennedy family are also blasting the move. White House Press Secretary Levitt says that the board decided to rename the center because of the unbelievable work that DJT has done over the last year in saving the building. He cleaned it up. It was actually becoming a dump. Over time, I said that. He didn't say that, believe it or not. Overtime in Seattle last night, Seahawks down by 1 and going for 2 against the Rams.
Warner in motion. Darnold throws, caught for the 2 points. Eric Saubert.
That's one way to win it, 38-37. 2-point conversion in Seattle, and the Seahawk fans like Chris Murray go crazy. The college football playoff. The playoffs kick off tonight. 8-seeded Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. They play host to 9th-seeded Alabama. The Sooners beat the Tide last month in the regular season 23-21. Should be a great game tonight. They canceled classes and the campus is closed today on a Friday, which it should be for the playoffs. Broncos on the practice field today, prepping for Sunday's big game against the Jags. They're going for 12 straight this weekend. The Magic at the Nuggets last night, 126-115.
Murray, they're daring him to shoot the 3, and he says, I will. Again.
Jamal Murray, 32.7 3-pointers. Winnipeg in town tonight take on the Avs at 7 o'clock. They'll drop the puck NHL action. 43 in Westminster, 44 in Highlands Ranch, and 45 in Denver. You're waking up with Jeff and Bill, and I got to play this really quick once again because the wind.
I am a lineman for the county.
It's not a Christmas song, but I love it. Maybe my favorite song of all time. Blake Olson, News Talks. Yeah, I think so.
I'll
For
have to
me.
talk about that someday.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Glenn Campbell was a freaking genius. He really was, to me. Blake Olson, News Talks, 710 KNUS.
Temperatures bounce right back up again after a cooler day yesterday. We'll be upper 60s and near 70 today, but windy. It'll be especially windy in the foothills and along and west of I-25, especially north to the Wyoming line. Then temperatures go back down again as a Pacific cold front gets pushed into the area tonight and Saturday. Lows tonight upper 30s, high Saturday cooling to the 50s. Late tonight and Saturday a possible shower or two, then rebounding temperatures back to the 50s to near 60 for Sunday and Monday. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Ooh. Bing Crosby records this for the movie Holiday Inn. Early 40s, I think, is when it's released. But here, listen for a sec. In the movie, he's in California, and he's dreaming of having a White Christmas.
Yeah.
That's the setup inside the movie. Went to #1 that year and was the #1 song in the holiday season for almost a decade or so afterwards. Huh. The thing that's the coolest is it wins the Academy Award for Best Original Song at the Oscars in 42, 43, 44, somewhere in there, whenever it's released, early 40s. It is Irving Berlin who presents the award. He wrote the song. It's one of the few times where the Oscar presenter gives the award to himself, and he literally says on stage, I've kind of known about this for a little bit. I guess he saw. Yeah, I just think that's cool.
Well, lots to talk about. Some interesting bills this week up in Congress that have to do with sex change procedures on minors, and a lot of questions over some votes on this one. Joining to provide his perspective and some clarity, Congressman Gabe Evans joins the Jeff and Bill show. Good morning, Congressman.
Morning.
Morning. Always good to be on with you guys.
Well, let's talk the two different votes on this bill, on the two different bills out there. So tell us why you voted yes on one, no on the other. Give us your reasoning.
Yeah, let me first just take 15 seconds because we know there's 67,000. I think that was the number that I saw this morning, folks without power this morning. And so if you're without power in the Front Range, you're listening to this right now on your battery-powered emergency radio or something like that, and you need help, reach out to me, reach out to my office. GabeEvans.house.gov is the website where you can find all of the different contact information, because we want to hear about that. I'm on the committee that has oversight over grid security and stability, and so if you're experiencing these blackouts, we want to hear from you. Toward your question, like you said, two bills. I know this is going to shock you. Sometimes bills get written for grandstanding purposes, and they have no path to actually becoming law. That was the first bill that came up 2 days ago now. That bill said that a doctor who performs a sex change operation on a minor is guilty of a federal felony, and cops have to go into the doctor's office or the hospital, arrest that doctor, and go put him in jail for 10 years. I was a cop. I have thoughts on that I'm sure we'll get into. The second bill said, let's just preemptively not pay for sex change for minors through insurance, and doctors aren't going to go perform an expensive procedure if they're not going to get paid for it. So we're equally as effective, much less, it's less heavy-handed. It actually saves the government money. And by the way, you're actually preemptively preventing sex change for minors from happening versus the criminal thing where you can only arrest somebody typically after the crime has occurred. So I was a no on arresting doctors and putting cops in the bad situation of having to go arrest doctors, because that bill, in addition to being just, to me, bad policy, it's got no chance of becoming law. It's dead on arrival in the Senate. And I was a yes on not paying for sex change for minors, which, again, preemptively defunds that procedure, much lower level of government intrusion and government force involved there, and it actually saves money.
So I want to get clarification and be crystal clear on all this, that you believe that sex change surgeries done on minors should be prohibited.
Yeah, they're wildly inappropriate.
But proponents of the Marjorie Taylor Greene bill would say that if doctors are doing that, they're obviously harming children, they should be prosecuted. What's wrong with that?
Again, we just talked about it. If you have a lower use of force, this is basic cop 101. The goal is to get compliance with the law. I was law enforcement, so I had to go out and enforce laws. When you're enforcing laws, as a good friend of mine from Colorado Springs says, laws are ultimately enforced by people with guns. And so if you're going to make a law, then that means somebody has to enforce the law. We want to be able to get compliance with minimal force, minimal government involvement. That's like the core hallmark of being a small government conservative. And so if we have two bills that accomplish the same thing, which is preventing sex changes on minors, we want to use the one that requires minimal force, minimal government intrusion, minimal outlay of taxpayer money. Defunding the procedures preemptively meets all of those criteria for me. The one that says cops have to go arrest doctors is very heavy-handed. It's after the fact, so you didn't actually protect the kid. And it also has no chance of becoming law. So, I mean, if we're going to talk policy, that bill that says arresting doctors is the functional equivalent of an angry letter to the editor. It is dead on arrival in the Senate. It's not going anywhere.
Now, you were one of 4 Republicans that voted against it. I just want to explore this a little bit more. The belief, though, that if these doctors are out there actually performing these procedures, should there be some mechanism to hold them accountable? I mean, I understand we're going to take away the funding so that those types of surgeries don't take place, but we all know that there's going to be doctors that are going to find other avenues of funding for that. What should the responsibility be to hold those types of doctors accountable? Should there be an effort to possibly prosecute them, in your mind?
You got to get it past the Senate, and I mean that's the first question. How do you get something like that through the Senate? And I'm telling you right now, this bill that says that cops have to go into hospitals and doctors' offices to go arrest a doctor and make him a federal felon, it's not going to move through the Senate. So this is just a theoretical conversation right now. If you actually want to make change and you actually want to protect kids, then you have to have things that have a chance of passing, that have a chance of becoming law. And that's what the second bill did. This second bill says we're not going to pay for these things. And when doctors aren't getting paid to go perform these, as you said, yeah, they may find some other sort of funding mechanism out there, but now you have a whole other slew of questions that are implicated in there. What is that funding source? Who's paying for this? Are there other mechanisms? There's a lot of federal law out there that governs the medical profession, and so if there are other unethical or shady things happening around those other funding sources, then you can go and look and find different enforcement mechanisms for that. You know, the classic example in this space is Al Capone got taken down not for any of the big things that he did. He got taken down for not paying his taxes. So you use all of the tools at your disposal while recognizing that certain tools, like putting doctors in jail for 10 years, are never going to become law.
That's Gabe Evans, congressman from the 8th Congressional District. That's the northern parts of Denver, all the way up into Weld County. Let's talk about the Democrat opposition to any of these. Clearly, during the last election, surveys showed that the most impactful ad was about Kamala Harris's commitment to sex change operations for illegal immigrants. And yet Democrats continue to double down on these types of procedures, particularly for minors. And not wanting to put any type of prohibition on this. What are you hearing from Democrats in Washington, D.C., and why are they so committed to the idea of providing sex change operations for minors?
This just speaks to the broader concept that Democrats have completely broken and mismanaged the healthcare system at large, whether it's giving taxpayer dollars to illegal immigrants, whether it's using taxpayer money to pay for sex changes for minors. Democrats have broken healthcare in general, and this is just one small microcosm of how Democrats have broken healthcare. And they have zero intention of changing their ways until they continue to lose at the ballot box, because that's the only way that the American people can communicate to them in a way that they understand that this is wrong, and the American people are sick and tired of that. And so those are the things that, again, Republicans are fighting for in Washington, D.C., that I've voted for numerous times. The NDAA. So that's the National Defense Authorization Act. We have no military without the NDAA. The NDAA had language in it this year that said no boys and girls sports at military academies. We've passed multiple other pieces of policy that are focused on making sure that health care goes to things that are actually important to Americans, and making sure that it doesn't go to all the things that the Democrats want to do, like sex changes for minors, for illegal immigrants, with your taxpayer money.
We got lots of text messages on either side of your vote on this one. I want to give you a chance to respond. Goldbrick texting in saying, "Thank heavens Gabe Evans not just posturing up there like everybody else is, wasting everybody's time. Others saying, Brian from Littleton going, why not just vote yes on both bills and let the judiciary sort it out? What's your response to Brian from Littleton?
Yeah, two thoughts there. First, you got three separate co-equal branches of government. So if I just vote yes and let the judiciary sort it out, then I'm ceding congressional authority. This is the branch that's elected by the people, the closest to the people. I'm ceding that authority to the judiciary, which right now we happen to have a Supreme Court that's a little bit more favorable. But we don't know that that's always going to be the case. So that's the first thing is I'm there as a separate co-equal member of a constitutionally established branch of government. And so I have to make the best vote that I can based on the information that's in front of me and not flick the booger to someone else, as we used to say in the Army. And then the second thing is exactly in those lines. The thing that I have found drives people crazy about Washington, D.C. is when somebody says, oh, this is, a member of Congress thinks to themselves, this is a bad bill. But you know what? For political expediency, I'm going to vote for it, even though I think it's a bad bill, or the opposite. This is a good bill, but because of political expediency, I'm going to vote against it. That's not why I went to Congress. It's that sort of political gamesmanship that make people lose faith in their elected representatives. And so when I look at a piece of legislation, when I compare and contrast that to my 10 years of being a police officer in this case, and I say, this is just bad law. I mean, we're talking federal law here. That carries weight to it. This isn't just some political gamesmanship. I'm going to make a vote based on the policy, based on the law that's in front of me, and comparing and contrasting that with the 10 years I spent in law enforcement, the 12 years I spent in the military, being a husband for 16 years, a father, all the other experiences I have. I'm going to let my yes be yes and my no be no based on my analysis of the policy in front of me.
That's Gabe Evans, Congressman CD8, joining Jeff and Bill live. I get a question about the theory. I understand why we wouldn't want to have some minors have gender transition surgery, but if it's the surgery itself that can be so dangerous, why aren't we preventing it for all children under the age of 18? Why are there exceptions for some kids, but we're not okay with the other kids having it?
What do you mean exceptions for some kids?
Yeah, what I'm saying is that between top and bottom surgery for gender transitions, the bottom surgery for people under the age of 18 is a fraction of a percent and happens almost never for anybody under the age of 12. Most of the transition surgeries we're talking about are gender affirming care, and gender affirming care being a broad umbrella, normally happens everything above the waist. But the vast majority of breast reductions and breast surgery at that age group happens on males that are not trans. And what I'm looking at is these are the same type of procedures that we say is not okay for trans kids, but we're okay with that type of elective surgery and having insurance cover it for kids that, say they're the same biological sex as they are when they were born. And it just seems like a differentiation that we've decided, well, this group can't have it, but the other group can. If it's bad, why isn't it bad for everybody?
So are you asking about the difference between different types of insurances covering it?
No, I'm just saying in general that if we don't think that insurance should cover any of the surgeries that are done to alter the kid's body under the age of 18, then why are we going to continue to make it okay for some of that surgery to be paid for?
You would say, Bill, like a breast augmentation, like if a boy has too big of a breast or something, they can go in. But that happens? I'm just not aware of that really happening.
The majority of the breast surgeries on people under the age of 18 are on men. It's the majority of it. So it's not trans kids getting boobs or anything else. The vast majority of it is on boys getting breast reduction. The second largest cohort is women getting a breast enhancement or a reduction. And the small fraction that is left over is those people that are trans. Which, again, if it is breast augmentation at that time, we know that can be removed later on. I do believe that down below the equator is a much different medical issue. But above, the weird part is the majority of people who are doing it are boys that say they're boys.
Okay.
But
Congressman Evans, you want to respond?
Yeah, so this is something that I would run into every day as a police officer when you're investigating a case. The slightest detail that changes can alter the legal trajectory of a case, even though they're very, very similar. And the exact same thing can happen in the medical space. The cop example that I'd always get is it illegal for me to punch someone? Well, yes, most of the time, but sometimes no. And the slightest detail can change whether I was punching somebody out of an act of illegal aggression, or was I punching somebody because I had probable cause to believe that I was preventing a child abduction from happening. And the slightest detail can change that. You have the exact same thing that happens in the medical space. And so that's why something that says go arrest doctors and put them in jail as felons for 10 years, that's sweeping in entirely too broad of a brush, because this is now going to have negative impacts, not just on the cops that have to go do this, but this is now going to have negative impacts on the medical community at a time when Americans are concerned about rising healthcare costs because of the previously mentioned Democrat mismanagement of the healthcare system. And so this is why we have to have thoughtful laws in this space that actually they have the appropriate amount of guidance to be able to give good guidance to doctors and to the insurance companies to make good decisions, but there's still enough room in there for medical judgment to be able to be inserted as to whether or not this is a necessary procedure, an optional procedure, whether it's connected to something else. I mean, the human body is the most complex structure in the known universe. And so being able to go do those, to treat the human body, you have to have room left in there for the judgment of a medical professional who's spent, decades at times in school and in practice.
I appreciate that, Congressman Evans, but none of it necessarily directly addresses the question that I have. And I understand the idea that there are these circumstances that change what we do both in law enforcement but also in the medical field. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is the thing that changed seems to be whether or not that person identifies as trans or not. That's why we will approve the surgery. And so what I'm getting to is just the idea, the core of, if surgery equal bad, then why then do we cut the line based on if they identify, as we can say, and I do disagree with this pronoun, but the idea of a cisgender versus a transgender.
But yeah,
that's the
I think
idea.
motivation is the issue. But Congressman Evans,
the motivation would be to reaffirm their gender identity, especially again in the boys that are trying to get their larger chests reduced. That would again be gender affirming. The issue is we just don't like it.
Do you think it's the same? Yeah, I don't think it's the same. I think it's different.
They feel it's psychologically it's the same thing. They feel awkward. They feel like they don't look right. They feel like they look like a girl in many ways, and so they're looking at it that way. That's why they're trying to get the two big boobs taken away. And majority of it in that age group is done on boys, and that's the only thing that I have a question about. And again, I'm not indicting Gabe Evans, and I'm not expecting him to run a bill, etc. I'm just talking larger. The larger conversation is questionable to me when we've identified this one cohort and say they can't have the surgery, but the other cohort can have the surgery, but we've identified the surgery as bad and negative. Why wouldn't it hold true for both groups? But again, that's for another day.
Well, I'm happy to give Congressman Evans the ability to respond to that, if you'd like, sir.
Yeah. No, two thoughts there. First, I think the American people are smart enough to understand the difference between boys and girls. And so I think typically when the left uses the term gender-affirming surgery, they're typically referring in terms of opposites, a boy turning into a girl turning into a boy, vice versa. So I think there's an important distinction to be drawn there. Is the first thing. And then second, I might have misunderstood your question, but it sounded like the premise that you said was if surgeries are bad, why just not ban them all? And again, I think that's one of those overly broad brushstrokes there, where we know sometimes surgical intervention is necessary to help human beings out. Like that's why we have surgeons and doctors, and they get paid a lot of money, and people are very thankful when a surgeon saves their life for doing something that's medically necessary. But there's not you've got a gradient of things on that whole medically necessary spectrum just based on the complexities of the human body. And so that's why thoughtful, nuanced law, like the one we have that says we're not funding transgender procedures for minors, to me, that has a lot more nuance in it that doesn't negatively impact the broader healthcare system, like the chilling effect of doctors are going to go get arrested if they do something that a cop thinks that's gender affirming under this law. So sorry, you're going to be a federal felon and go to jail for 10 years. Like I can't get behind that. I'm 100% opposed to transgender procedures for minors. But there's a right way to go about that and a wrong way to go about doing that.
That's Congressman Gabe Evans. Congressman, I know we're right up against the time you've been able to give us, so I want to give you the opportunity to talk about your race coming up, Congressional District 8, one of the closest districts in the entire country. Democrats totally locked and loaded and ready to go hard in this election against you. Talk to folks about the importance of your district and what's at stake here.
We have a one-vote majority in the U.S. House of Representatives again from January to probably April of this year. And this seat was the only seat in the country that we flipped in a blue state. All of the other Republican pickups around the country happened in red states that President Trump won. So the reason we can even have this conversation right now is because the House and the Senate, again, you got to have 60 votes to pass something through the Senate. Republicans only have 53 votes. But we have that one vote majority in the House. We have a majority, but not a supermajority in the Senate and the president's in the White House. The reason any of this stuff is happening right now to stop paying for illegal immigrants, taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries on minors, the reason any of this is even happening is because we have the U.S. House. And there's an argument to be made that this was the seat that gave us that control of the U.S. House because it was the only flip seat in the country in a blue state. So holding this is what continues the common sense moving forward. Democrats know it. They're coming for me with everything they've got. We're fighting back as hard as we can. And so that's kind of the snapshot going into next year.
And as somebody who works in Congress, give folks a real quick perspective on what happens if Democrats end up with total control, the impeachments, the investigations, and all the time being sucked up towards that.
So if they flip just the House, remember, as we talked about earlier, that the House is one of the two bodies in Congress, is a separate co-equal branch of government that, among many other things, is vested with subpoena authority. So they can subpoena any member of the Trump administration that they want, drag them into the House, grill them, cross-examine them, question them. If they don't answer the question the way that the Democrat now, chairman of the Oversight Committee or whoever is grilling, now you have contempt of Congress charges. I mean, they can obstruct everything. They can block funding. They can bring everything to a halt. If we thought that the 43-day government shutdown that they just imposed on us for leverage, if you thought that was rough, that's going to be child's play compared to what happens if they flip the U.S. House. And again, January through May of April, we're down to a functional one-vote majority.
Gabe Evans, congressman from the 8th Congressional District, he began his interview by saying, if you're experiencing power outages right now, go to gabeevans.house.gov, gabeevans.house.gov. He's got resources there, but most importantly, he wants to hear directly from you the experience you're having because he sits on a very important committee regarding the nation's infrastructure and power grid. Congressman Evans, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on to answer our questions.
Yes, thanks a lot, and Merry Christmas.
Always good to be on with you guys. Merry Christmas.
All right, that's gabeevans.house.gov. What did you think of his answers to those questions? He wants to be nuanced. He wants to be a statesman. He wants to explore this issue from his perspective thoughtfully. Look, I'm kind of the mindset of kicking down doors and arresting doctors who do this stuff, but he thinks there's another direction to go that's not requiring that.
Yeah, I don't think, it's, again, I think for me, the largest argument of that is you're only coming in after the thing that you're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
And if you're really about prevention, then I think you need to focus on the front end. For me, that is the most persuasive argument. That if you go in and you arrest that doctor, what you're mad about and what you're angry about has already been accomplished. So is that necessarily going to be the solution?
What do you think? Thoughtful response, or is he missing an opportunity here? Want to hear directly from you. Phone lines open. Jump in quick if you want to be a part of it. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line at 720-819-5115. And guys, look, I fully recognize too, like I'm a pragmatist person, that I'm not running for office in the 8th Congressional District. I can sit here in my microphone and say, yeah, kick down the doors, arrest these guys. So is that part of it as well? Would love to hear from you. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS. right. This is Brenda Lee. Yeah. Now, she's just 13 years old when she records this.
13?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And it doesn't chart the first year, but it does become a hit the following year. The coolest thing about this, that in the background, is it's recorded in Nashville in the fall of the year that's released. Obviously, no snow. So 13-year-old Brenda said in order to get in the mood, they turned the air conditioning up all the way, so it was freezing in the studio. That's how they got into the mood.
That is funny. Text message is hot on this one. Gabe Evans explaining a yes vote to defund trans surgeries, a no vote to imprison the doctors who do it, making the argument that it's not pragmatic. He was a police officer for 10 years, and to basically be kicking down doors and arresting these guys, not necessarily nuanced enough for him. He's trying to be a statesman. Do you applaud him for doing that? He represents a swing district. And this a nuanced vote, in his mind, he makes the argument that he is 100% against trans surgeries for minors. He just wants to stop them from happening as opposed to arresting them afterwards. Aaron Lee texting in, saying from Protect Kids Colorado, their ballot measures would prevent these procedures on children. Coloradans can do what their elected reps like Gabe won't do. Join us at protectkidscolorado.org. Wow. Directly from Aaron Lee. Let's go to the phone lines. Representative Brandy Bradley joining us. Good morning, Representative. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Always a pleasure.
It's always nice to hear from you. What's on your mind?
A lot to say about this. I appreciate Congressman Evans for coming on, but he's on the wrong side of this. I mean, in the state of Colorado, at the age of 12, parents are pretty much banned from going into medical rooms with their children. House Bill 241309 made it so taxpayers are funding these gender mutilation surgeries on children. I tried to pass an amendment to stop this on children under the age of 18. They passed it anyway. As medical professionals, we sign a Hippocratic oath to do no harm. This is child abuse, to cut off healthy body parts of children, and these doctors should be put in prison and federally charged. I am blown away that we would vote no on a bill that would charge people doing harm to children. I have no words.
Yeah, Representative Bradley, I'm going to give you a chance to respond to his argument. He believes there's important nuance in here. Bill brought this up in his conversation. Sometimes boys get breast reductions for surgical purposes or for like kind of health purposes, not to change their genders. Would this have provided that type of nuance, or would those doctors also be arrested? What's your response?
I think that's a ridiculous assessment. I mean, these boys, Bill and I talked on the side of this, these boys are getting extra tissue taken off. That's like taking a lipoma off at the dermatologist, okay? This is not changing your gender because you think that you're a girl. This is not a breast augmentation. This is taking extra tissue off of extra breast tissue. That's a nuance that you're using to scapegoat a bad, poor decision to vote against this bill.
Now, could we make the argument that a female that is transitioning to male is doing the same thing, removing that tissue?
No, because you're removing tissue because you think that you're the opposite sex, which is a totally different argument, which we don't even really have time to discuss. I mean, we're not talking about a male who thinks that they're a female. We're not talking about a mentally ill child that wants to change their gender. We're talking about someone that wants to remove extra tissue, like a lipoma, like an extra growth.
Yeah,
it's two separate issues.
I understand that, and I respect that. And here's why I draw that line of distinction. Why I I put them back together again is because I understand what you're saying about them being different with men and women. However, in both cases, it's about appearance. In both cases, it's about making them feel more confident about who they are. In both cases, it's about affirming their gender. If we're taking off that tissue for the boys to affirm their gender and who they are, we're doing the same to women as well. And the same thing is said about augmentation processes for both females and boys that are transitioning into girls, and at the adult as well. All of that argument about them and who they are is made. And the gender-affirming surgery that's done on the boys that say they're boys is done for the same reason, to make them feel better about themselves and some other reasons as well. But that's really, it's the same thing.
I wouldn't agree with you. I think that removing extra tissue is not really affirming their manhood. You're talking about chopping off healthy body parts versus taking extra tissue off of a chest wall. I, as a medical professional, I totally see that differently, but we can agree to disagree on that.
That's fair.
That's Representative Brandy Bradley. We're talking the interview we just had with Gabe Evans. Gabe talking about his vote for yes on banning funding for transgender surgeries, saying that he 100% disagrees with the idea of doing trans surgeries on minors, but believes that Marjorie Taylor Greene's bill went too far in essentially allowing police officers to kick down doors and arrest doctors who are doing these. Gabe Evans is facing a primary from a man named Adam Dorito. Representative Bradley, would you support a primary challenge to Gabe Evans?
You know, I haven't even gone there right now, honestly, Jeff. My other question to Gabe is he's in a swing district, but if you look at the polling, I think it was 80% of Democrats disagree with gender mutilation and these surgeries. So where does he sit on that? I mean, I have Democrats and like the most radical feminists reaching out to me saying they do not agree with these mutilations. I had a transgender adult reach out to me and say, stop this nonsense on children that is fighting against this. I mean, has he talked to detransitioners? And Bill, you had made the point, well, I agree with prevention. Well, when you have a child that is mutilated like this, you start fighting against these doctors, and that is the prevention, right? If my child was harmed by doctors that say do no harm, I would be hell-bent on fighting for other children not to have this happen. And so that is prevention. Arresting these doctors will prevent other children from being harmed.
That's Representative Brandy Bradley joining the conversation. Representative, thank you very much for your time, and have a very Merry Christmas.
Merry
we
Christmas.
wish the best
Thanks.
to your family.
Hey, guys, Merry Christmas. Thanks so much.
All right, we'll continue. Join the conversation. We are Denver's debate show. This is where the conversation takes place. There's no other program like this in Colorado. So if you agree with Gabe Evans, give us a call. If you disagree, give us a call as well. We want to hear from you. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS. It's like announcing this song. Jose Feliciano.
Are you allowed to play this in America when Trump's president?
I hope so, because I've been playing the crap out of it on the Christmas formats
Of course
I've been doing.
you would.
The thing rotates. It's not. I didn't program it, but the thing rotates about every. God, this is in a B rotation. Yeah, it's about every 4 hours is when it pops up.
We only sing Christmas carols in English.
Now, it's interesting you bring that up, my friend. History behind this song. Now, Jose Feliciano is doing a Christmas song. Music producer comes to him and says, we kind of need another one more upbeat. Can you do something? I need you to do something new. And he's like, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. Thanks. That's a jerk. Goes back. Originally wrote most of it in Spanish because obviously that's his native tongue. He comes back and he makes it bilingual because he knew the English American radio stations wouldn't be able to say no. It has English in it specifically for America. That's why it exists in bilingual.
There you go.
Yep.
All right, so you're an independent, Mr. Thorpe.
Yes, no problem to most.
You're going to make up a bulk of the voters that are going to be in Gabe Evans' district.
That should scare a lot of people.
Did Gabe's interview regarding his 2 votes, he had 2 votes this week, both on transgender surgeries. He said 100%, unequivocally, he is opposed to trans surgeries on minors. He voted yes to defund it. He voted no to having cops kick in doors and arrest the docs, making the argument that he didn't think it's just a good bill. He did not think it was good legislation, that this was quintessential American congressional posturing. It's not going to pass the Senate, so he wants to actually get upstream and try to address the surgeries there. You as an independent voter, did that type of reasoning appeal to you as him being a thoughtful lawmaker? What was your thoughts?
It does. And it does because he's focused on the before, not the after. The other part is the idea of how many of these surgeries that we would arrest the doctors for were signed off on by the parents. And that's an interesting thing because then you have the state saying that the doctor involved and the parent involved both said this is okay, and yet the state comes in and tells you no, it's not. I find that very interesting, especially if we're talking about the idea of freedom and liberty, that where else then could we apply that type of a test?
Well, it's child abuse.
But
I mean, even if the parents are involved, I don't care. It's child abuse. They should kick down the doors, arrest these doctors. If they're abusing children, we would do it.
But hang on, now the idea is it's still child abuse then for breast augmentation or rhinoplasty for people.
Motivation matters. It's part of the equation.
See, that's the issue, is that the idea of motivation, that you've assumed that the parents have the bad moments. You disagree with the motives. So that's exactly my point about the state taking away the individual or the family's right to choose for themselves. Instead, we are going to make this, and it's going to be a forced conformity.
But motivation is all part of criminal analysis, right?
I know, but it doesn't make it criminal necessarily. If the person...
Well, yes, motivation absolutely makes it criminal.
No, but I'm saying this action doesn't necessarily make it criminal. We're just deciding that it's criminal. I don't agree that if the parent, the child, and the doctor all agree that this would be beneficial, that it's necessarily criminal. Now, I do have a real problem with anything happening below the equator. And I think that can have some really, really horrible health effects. But everything above the equator, we have seen both males and females go through that in various forms. There's a dude that got a breast enhancement for himself to win a bet. And he won tens of thousands of dollars.
As a minor?
Over it. No, as an adult, but I'm just saying.
Well,
and then he had it.
Dumb.
I know, but then he had it removed later. So I'm just saying that anything that is happening above the equator seems to be able to be reversed. And the idea that then we're deciding that's criminal. And so the idea is, if this behavior in and of itself is criminal, then why isn't it criminal against all the kids? Why are we only picking out the small group of kids that we don't like?
9722 text in, this is genital mutilation. And that's banned.
Again, that would be below the equator. However, if I really want it to be a problem, as one of the texters said, that I always like to be the fly in the ointment, most Christians have an entire celebration over what some people would consider genital mutilation, and that'd be circumcision. And Jewish people do it as well. That is altering the genitals of an individual.
The motivation matters. You can't change somebody's biological sex.
But
just
here-
by
but
cutting
here-
off things, that's all part of the equation here, is that you have a bunch of parents that are delusional, believing that if they chop off healthy body parts, whether it's below the equator or above, that you're somehow changing somebody's sex.
A trans
insane.
male doesn't necessarily have to chop off anything. That can be a breast enhancement. That can be so. There's different things there.
Oh, it's
So,
still
doesn't necessarily
a problem, and
No.
it should be. And look,
We've just
I
decided this
would
group is the one that
recommend
we don't
kicking
like.
down doors and arresting doctors, but as I often point out, there's not a chance I'm ever being elected in this state. So, maybe that's part of the equation, and Gabe's just being smarter than me here. But he did say, I want to make it clear, he said 100% against these types of trans surgeries against minors. All right, we'll continue. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is CanUS.